This episode of the EV Resource Podcast is brought to you by Titan Auto and Tire. Titan has some of the very few independent auto repair shops in Central Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs and hybrids. And from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. For more information and to schedule an appointment for your vehicle, go to TitanAutoTire.com. Coming up this week, Tesla confirms the 500-mile range for their semi-truck. Domino's Pizza buys Bolt EVs. I'll recap the exciting Extreme E season finale and more. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 131 of the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and interviews with industry experts. For those of you who did celebrate, I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving break with your friends, family, and loved ones. I myself took advantage of the time and went up to Dominion Raceway to shoot some video of the Hyundai Ioniq 5, Kia EV6, and Genesis GV60 performance all at once. We did drag races with each, including a bonus race of the Ioniq 5 versus my wife's Tesla Model 3, and even raced the Spark EV against the Model 3, which you would imagine is not really much of a race. But after tweaking the method of the drag race, we had what might be a surprising result. I won't give it away, though. Keep an eye on the EV Resource YouTube channel for all the fun. I already uploaded the EV6 hot lap and a short video showing off some of the cool features of the Genesis GV60. I probably have enough footage for maybe 8 or 9 other longer form videos, so there is a lot of work to do before I can get those up and basically be able to show them to you all. I really want to thank Ron for bringing out the Ioniq 5 for some more action. I have been up to the track with Ron before, did a hot lap with his car, and got some good numbers for the quarter mile. And then also we recently did a 70-mile-an-hour range test, which I still need to edit that video. So Ron, thank you for bringing that out again. I want to thank Jeff from the Technically Jeff YouTube channel and social media awesomeness for bringing out his EV6 with some really cool wheels. And Andy for bringing the Genesis GV60 performance. It was just so cool to see all three of those cars together and compare their performance, being that, you know, they're all based on the same eGMP platform from Hyundai Motor Group. That was just so neat. Next time, I think we should have a Tesla Performance Day, get the Model 3 and Y Performance, as well as the Tesla Model S and X Plaids. That would be really cool. And then as a side note, I am looking to get the Mustang Mach-E and Mach-E GT out there, hopefully at the same time as maybe the Model Y long range and performance. That would be really cool to see how those cars compared against one another from a performance aspect. And then other cars I'd like to test would be like the Mini SE, Mercedes-Benz EQS, Lucid Air, and of course the EV trucks, the F-150 Lightning from Ford and the Rivian R1T. So if you yourself have one of these vehicles, or you know somebody in Central Virginia that wants to come up and have some fun with me at the track, please reach out via email to hello@ev-resource.com and let's set something up. That would be really cool. I hope those of you who participated in the Patreon monthly Zoom chat, the EV Resource Water Cooler chat, as I call it, I hope you all enjoyed it. We had an engaging conversation about all sorts of things going on in the EV world, as well as our own lives. And one of my favorite things is actually being able to connect with all of you in a more personal way, getting to know you and your vehicles a bit better. I really enjoy that. I have a lot of fun with it. For this coming month, December's Zoom call will be scheduled most likely for the weekend before Christmas. So if you haven't participated in that before and you want to be a part of it, just make sure you've joined the EV Resource Patreon family, and I will have more information on that and how that works at the end of the episode. Okay. Enough of that, let's get on to the news. First up is a story from Fred Lampert over at Electrac, reporting on the Tesla Semi and a tweet from Elon Musk. Fred writes that Elon Musk has confirmed that the Tesla Semi has completed its first 500-mile trip with a full load, and that's quite a feat for a full battery electric truck. The Tesla Semi is an all-electric Class 8 commercial truck that Tesla first unveiled 5 years ago in 2017, with an intended start to production in 2019, just 2 years later. However, as with many other things, it has been delayed several times. At that time, it was quite revolutionary to have a purely battery-powered truck with a full 80,000-pound Class 8 capacity capable of traveling between 300 and 500 miles, depending on the model. Since then, several other companies have managed to beat Tesla to market with their own Class 8 electric semi-trucks, such as Volvo, Freightliner, and, surprisingly, Nikola. Wouldn't have seen that one coming. But those other trucks have only managed to come closer to the lower end of that range, around 300 miles at best. So now Tesla is finally bringing its electric truck to market, with deliveries expected to start this week, December 1st, and it looks like it's going to be the 500-mile version of their semi. Tesla's CEO, Elon Musk, confirmed that the semi has completed a 500-mile trip with a full load, tweeting, quote, "Tesla team just completed a 500-mile drive with a Tesla semi weighing in at 81,000 pounds," end quote. It seems a bit last minute to complete the first 500-mile drive, considering that they are expected to deliver production versions of the truck this week to PepsiCo. But Tesla has presumably previously completed many shorter trips that confirmed the full range could reach 500 miles on a single charge. And 500 miles with a full load between charges is kind of the sweet spot for commercial long-haul semi-truck, because after about 8 hours of driving, a break for the driver is mandatory. With that capacity and a much lower cost of operation per mile than diesel trucks, the Tesla Semi is expected to have a major impact on the trucking industry. Tesla is going to hold an event for the first Tesla Semi deliveries on Thursday, December 1st. And I think this is a much, much bigger deal than most people are making about it, at least from what I've seen. From a cost perspective alone, Tesla estimates that operators can see an estimated fuel savings of up to $200,000 within the first 3 years of ownership. So then once you factor in the savings from maintenance or lack of maintenance and repairs, it basically pays for itself in a very short period of time. In fact, you could buy 2 of them and operate them in like a relay style, like Pony Express, if you really needed to get your cargo moved more than 500 miles in a short period of time, and it would still cost you less over the life of the vehicles than one diesel-powered truck. That is massive. And while, yes, this has been significantly delayed, this is great news for the trucking industry as a whole, and I definitely wish a well-deserved congratulations to the entire Tesla team that have been working so hard on this project. Next, I've talked a few times about the quickest accelerating production vehicles on the road. The record used to be held by the Tesla Model S Plaid with a 1.99 0 to 60 time, and then the Rimac Nevera with a 1.85 0 to 60 time. But now, even that has been beaten. The Pininfarina Battista electric hypercar has beaten that time with a physics-defying 1.79 seconds 0 to 60. And keep in mind that this is a road-legal production car, not a race car, not a Formula One car, although even Formula One cars don't accelerate this quickly. This is absolutely crazy, and the acceleration doesn't stop at 60, of course. The Battista will hit 120 miles per hour, so 0 from a dead stop to 120 in 4.49 seconds. That is as quick as some of the quickest EVs, or any car really, will hit 60. They're doubling it at 120, and then it will continue on to a limited top speed of 217 miles an hour. This is quite the car. It looks like a hypercar. It's got the aerodynamics like a hypercar. It's got the price tag like a hypercar, which I'll get to. And it's also got the power. This is a 1,900 horsepower and 1,725 pound-feet of torque car. It is the most powerful production car to ever come out of Italy, with 4 electric motors powered by a 120 kilowatt-hour battery pack. Not only does it have the speed, but it can provide up to 295 miles of range, provided that you don't punch the go pedal as much as you would likely want to if you were driving one. And if you do want one of these, you'll likely have a really hard time actually coming by it. While the company is selling them for $2.25 million, there are only going to be 150 made, and I would wager that they're all accounted for already. So if you really want to accelerate to 0 to 60 in roughly 2 seconds or so, and you've got $2.25 million to spend, I would recommend getting the Tesla Model S Plaid. Add the carbon ceramic brakes, hack the software to unlock the 216 mile an hour top speed, like I believe it was Igenex or Ingenex. I forget exactly how to pronounce that company, but they're up in Canada and they did it. And if you did all of that with the upgrades to the car, you would still save yourself a little bit more than $2 million in the process. I mean, that is just insane. These cars are getting so... I think outrageous is probably an appropriate word, and I don't mean that to be outrageous in an insulting way. It's very exciting. And I know many of you who listen to the podcast don't see the need for such a car like this, or even would consider it a waste of battery materials. And I certainly understand where you're coming from, so I'll leave it at that, I guess. But this next story is very much likely to be one that you'll appreciate. The Chevy Bolt EV. And I know the irony of going from something like a $2.25 million hypercar to the Bolt is not lost on me. But the Bolt is strong in its own right. It's not the world's quickest accelerating EV. I mean, not even close. But it is, however, one of the most logical and reasonable choices for electric cars on the market right now, especially if you're looking for an inexpensive delivery vehicle. And apparently Domino's Pizza thinks that too, because they recently announced that they will be adding 800 2023 Chevy Bolt EVs to their fleet, making it the largest electric pizza delivery fleet in the U.S. Domino's has always been thinking about reducing carbon emissions, and this newest addition to the fleet isn't the first time that they've explored alternatives to gas-powered cars. In 2019, 3 years ago, Domino's ran a test program using electric bikes for pizza deliveries, with the intent of reducing emissions and saving money on gas. And after the program was such a hit with both customers and drivers, Domino's then implemented that across the U.S. In fact, here in Richmond, I often see Domino's pizza delivery drivers riding electric bikes. Now, granted, they're not wearing helmets, and that might hopefully be only an issue with the local store, but it definitely shows that Domino's is really putting themselves out there as wanting to make a significant change. Initially, 100 of the Bolts will be delivered by the end of the year, and then over the next several months, Domino's plans on adding the other 700 units as well. CEO Russell Weiner says, quote, Domino's has always been on the cutting edge of pizza delivery, and electric delivery cars make sense as vehicle technology continues to evolve. We've made a commitment to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, and this is one way we can begin reducing our environmental impact one delivery at a time, end quote. And I'd say it's only a matter of time before we see other companies adopting similar methods, or at least one could only hope. Next, VinFast just marked a major milestone in their global expansion journey with a ceremony for the first batch of EVs being exported to the U.S. VinFast notes that the first batch includes 999 VF8 SUVs. And I'm not sure why they didn't just make it one more. I like round numbers. But hey, that's fine. 999. And they're headed over on the Silver Queen, which is a cargo ship, and expected to arrive in California in about 20 days after deporting from a port in Haiphong, Vietnam, which I believe happened a couple days ago. So within the next couple weeks, we're going to have the first batch of VinFast production vehicles for North American customers. And they say this is only the beginning. They intend to continue to export more VF8 SUVs to both Canada and Europe as well for customer deliveries in early 2023. And this first batch is only a small part of the 65,000 global orders already made for VinFast's VF8 and VF9. At the ceremony to send off the very first EVs for international markets, Mr. Nguyen Viet Quang, Vice Chairman and CEO of Vingroup, said, quote, the export of the first 999 VF8s is a significant event for VinFast and Vingroup and a proud historical milestone for the Vietnamese automotive industry. It affirms that Vietnam has successfully produced high-quality standard electric vehicles that are ready to compete in the international market. We hope that when VinFast's smart electric vehicles roll out on the streets around the world, it will help promote the image of a new, dynamic, and progressive Vietnam to the global audience." End quote. So they're coming, a new milestone for the ever-growing EV market here in North America. I am really excited to see how the vehicles do and how the company grows their footprint on our shores. And it's interesting that when you have a country like Vietnam, they are somewhat of a smaller country, and VinFast basically owns everything. I mean, I think I've talked about the company as a whole, or Vin Group rather, not VinFast. VinFast is just the autos, but they are representing the country. You know, when GM sells globally, they aren't necessarily representing the United States. But here, VinFast is absolutely representing not only the automotive market in Vietnam, but the country itself. And I think that's pretty special. Next, Mercedes-Benz wants its customers with a need for speed to pay as much as $1,200 a year to unlock their EV's speed potential. The yearly subscription will unlock more power and performance from the EQE and EQS electric sedans and SUVs. Offering vehicle features as subscription services is a rather controversial practice in the automotive industry, and Mercedes-Benz is among those automakers experimenting with it. The automaker's U.S. online store lists the acceleration increase service as an option soon to be offered to customers on Mercedes-Benz EQE and EQS sedans and SUVs as a $1,200 annual subscription plus tax, made possible by the Mercedes Me Connect service. This feature increases the torque and maximum output of the vehicle, therefore unlocking more performance. Fine-tuning of the electric motors increases the maximum motor output of the Mercedes-Benz vehicles by 20 to 24% depending on the original factory output. For example, on the Mercedes-Benz EQE 350 4MATIC, the maximum output increases from 215 kilowatts to 260 kilowatts, which is a jump of 60 horsepower from 288 to 348, resulting in a quicker 0 to 60 time from originally 6 seconds to 5.1. The increase is the same for the EQE SUV, with 0 to 60 time dropping to 5.2 seconds from originally 6.2 in that case. The power increase is definitely going to be more significant on the EQS, which honestly is not too surprising, from 265 kilowatts to 330, or to put it in horsepower terms, 355 horsepower. This now will unlock it to 442 horsepower, resulting in a 0 to 60 time of 4.5 seconds for the sedan, down from 5.3, and 4.9 for the SUV, down from 5.8. And like it or not, offering features as subscription services is something that software-defined vehicles make possible, and it looks like we're going to see much more of this in the future. So I am actually really curious what you all think, and I'm sure I'm expecting most answers to be what I think about this as well, that this is nuts. I would pay $1,200 once to have that kind of power added to the car, but not year after year. That just, I don't know. I don't really understand it. Like, I'm not sure who the people are that would want to pay $1,200 a year. Maybe they're only keeping the car for a few years before trading it back in. Or maybe they want to have the car without it first and then upgrade later. I don't know. It's kind of a stretch for where I'm coming from with my mentality. I mean, yes, I personally love to go fast and have fun, so I want to have as much power as possible. But to pay a subscription service for that, I think that's a bit much. But the other thing that this has kind of put into my head is, now that we know it's possible to have that much power from these vehicles, how long do you think it's going to be before somebody hacks it and unlocks that power for a one-time fee of maybe $1,500 or $2,000 and kind of takes that business away from Mercedes? Now, yes, it's likely to void the warranty, so that's something to keep in mind. Similar to the way, and here we go again, Igenext? You know what? I'm going to look that up. Nginext. There we go. Okay. So similar to the way Nginext offers a power increase for Teslas, it does definitely affect your warranty if you get caught anyway. But I believe there's, at least for our Model 3, it's the rear-wheel drive, you can add 50 horsepower and unlock the heated steering wheel and rear seats, among other things, for $1,000 one time. That is something that I've absolutely considered. If they were doing $1,000 a year, I would absolutely not think about it at all. And I think BMW recently was experimenting with, I think it was the heated steering wheel as a subscription service as well. I don't know. It really brings questions up in my head. So I'm going to make that the question of the week for the Patreon question of the week. And once again, you don't have to be a Patreon supporter in order to go on the webpage and vote your voice, your opinion on this. And I definitely want to hear from as many people as possible. So you can head over to patreon.com/EVResource or check the link in the show notes. Do you support subscription services for vehicles to either increase power or even just unlock other features? Or do you think they should just offer that with a one-time payment, or even offer that with the freaking car originally, so that maybe it'll cost a little bit more, but you buy it, the car is yours, and you've got it? What do you guys think? I really want to know. Okay, lastly for the news this week, Extreme E had their final round of the season this weekend in Uruguay. The championship standings going into the Natural Energy X Prix weekend showed Rosberg X Racing, last year's champions, having a solid lead, and it would have taken everything going wrong for them to not win the title this season as well. But in what seemed like a cursed weekend for the team, everything really did go wrong. Drivers predicted the course would be tricky prior to the event, and that assessment proved an understatement. JBXE's Heda Hosas, RXR's Michaela Alan-Kalinsky, and X44's Cristina Gutierrez all had spectacular rolls in that order during their qualifying runs, each accident worse than the one before. X44's damage was so severe, they were forced to use Extreme E's spare backup car, but then Loeb decided to limit its use in one of the two qualifying races. The Frenchman dropped behind the field to get a clear run at the Continental Traction Challenge, which, if you set the fastest time in the super sector, the winner is awarded an additional 5 points. And he did that with a blistering time half a second quicker than anyone else to secure that extra 5 points. That is such an intelligent move, really, and it looks like it might have proved to be a determining factor in the championship results. The other qualifying race saw RXR's Christofferson controversially smashed from behind by the Apt Cupra of Nasser Al-Attiyah. The RXR car, with most of its rear end missing, was ultimately unable to continue, meaning that the two title contenders of RXR and X44 would both compete in the Crazy Race. The first of the three semifinal races was as chaotic as what had come before it in practice and qualifying, with Chip Ganassi's Sarah Price losing control and spinning on the very first jump before fighting back to bring the car into contention again by the time she handed over to her teammate, RJ Anderson, who was standing in for Kyle LeDuc. Granted, due to a downed waypoint marker, the team was at a 10-second disadvantage. Anderson managed to finish second, even while driving with the driver's door missing after it had fallen off, but ultimately was unable to pull out the gap needed to overcome the time penalty as dust and mud flew into the cockpit, with Apt Cupra's Clara Anderson and Veloce's Molly Taylor ultimately officially taking first and second place, respectively. The next semifinal managed to provide just as much drama, with title contender Laia Sands flipping her Odyssey 21 in a double barrel roll before immediately hitting the accelerator as soon as the car landed on its wheels. And then somehow she dragged the car back into the race as broken parts flew around inside the cockpit. And if you haven't seen that, go over to Extreme E's YouTube and look at the recap, because it's spectacular. In the end, teammate Carlos Sainz would ultimately fall short to the Andretti United of Katie Munnings and Timmy Hansen, and the McLaren of Gilmore and Faust, respectively, therefore eliminating another title contender. After the almost non-stop drama and excitement, things then ramped up even further in that final semi, the Crazy Race. Loeb's do-or-die effort in this round to get into the final came off in incredible fashion. His co-driver, Gutierrez, leapt into the lead in the beginning as the RXR car fell victim to heavy contact from the JBXE of Fraser McConnell, leaving its steering broken. After bringing it into the switch zone, RXR desperately tried to fix its bent spark Odyssey in the hope that Kristofferson could snatch X44's Super Sector points. With the other competitors significantly ahead, Kristofferson sat in his car waiting for it to be repaired, and the tension mounted, only for the team to be remarkably disqualified because they exceeded the number of mechanics allowed in the switch zone to attend to the car. You're only allowed one mechanic and the driver, I believe. So they had more and they were disqualified because of that. So that meant it was all down now to X44. They needed to finish at least third in the final race if they wanted to snatch the championship title from RXR. And they did that by finishing fourth on track in a tense final race, but they were promoted to third after the Andretti car that was just ahead of them was given a 7-second penalty for speeding in the driver's switch zone, meaning that then the official finish for Andretti was fourth and X44 would be third. The Apt Cupra of Nasir Al-Attiyah and Clara Anderson did win the final race, but understandably, most of the attention was directed towards the X44 team. With RXR team members looking almost inconsolable, Nico Rosberg, the owner, was philosophical in the aftermath, if not slightly shell-shocked by the events. He said, quote, "It's unbelievable how much can go wrong in motorsport sometimes. I can't believe we lost the championship. I mean, it was like in our hands since ages ago. It just went so wrong. It would have been difficult for it to go more wrong. But of course, also, some of it is our responsibility." End quote. For Sebastian Loeb, the title was another achievement in his glittering motorsport career. He said, quote, "For sure, I enjoyed the moment because it's a new championship, a hard battle on the track, sharing the cars between us, being able to share the victories together is also good," end quote. And if you have not been following Extreme E, I definitely recommend you go back to their YouTube channel. Start at the very beginning of season 1 last year and watch everything. It seems like with every race weekend, the series lives up to its name and more. It is truly incredibly extreme. With this season behind us now, we have to wait until March for 2023's season to begin, and the calendar is looking really exciting. Round 1 starts off again in Saudi Arabia. Round 2 is set to take place in Scotland this time, in the UK, and the one I'm most interested in would be round 4, potentially taking place here in the US. And I say potentially because it's currently showing as either going to be here or in Brazil. But you know I want it to be here. And what I wouldn't give for a chance to be on site as a member of the press, that would be absolutely spectacular. So, okay, that is it for the news this week, but stick around. There is plenty more to come right after this. On now to our question of the week. Last week, we were talking about Tesla deciding that their connector should be the North American charging standard, and I asked you all what you thought of it. The answers were notably split. 40% of the responses said that the Tesla connector should be the standard and that all other automakers should ditch CCS and adopt the Tesla plug. 40% said we should continue as we are, using both the CCS and Tesla plugs for their respective vehicles. And 20% said that Tesla should abandon its connector and adopt the CCS Type 1 plug for North American vehicles, similar to what they've done with their cars in Europe. Andy Cooper said, quote, "As great as the Tesla connector is in both elegance and ease of use, the NACS is a standard in name only. There's no independent standards body behind it, i.e. SAE. Without protocols and open compatibility with Tesla superchargers, this seems like an empty gesture, and worse, would cause terrible confusion on the general population. That ship has sailed. Why do we want to introduce a Betamax versus VHS or Blu-ray versus HD DVD war this late in the game when it feels like we're so close to a tipping point for EVs?" End quote. Maybe too little too late. You make a good point, Andy, and I have to tend to agree. Ideally, it would be awesome to see everybody else adopt the Tesla plug, but I'm very doubtful that will happen. So as I mentioned, this week's question of the week is, what do you think about manufacturers allowing access to features through subscriptions only? You can find that publicly available on Patreon. You do not have to be a supporter, and I'm really curious what you all have to say about it. Additionally, I've decided to add an option for you all to respond via audio. You can record your answer and email it to me, and if you'd like to do that, please keep it to 90 seconds or less and email your audio file to hello@ev-resource.com. I've also received a few requests to answer your questions about EVs as well, not just proposing a question and talking about your answers. I used to do this a while ago on the podcast, so I'm absolutely happy to bring this back. If you want to send me a text, email, or audio file with a question or comment you have, feel free. I'd love to include it in a future podcast. Before we end, I have a couple of announcements and requests. If you enjoy this podcast, chances are that people you know will enjoy it too. In addition to sharing it with them, because it's the nice thing to do, leaving a review also helps people find the podcast when they're searching for EV-related stuff. If you want to listen to any of the previous podcast episodes, you can find them on the webpage under the podcast section and on all of the best podcast platforms. If you're looking for more EV resource content in other ways, I encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as sign up on the webpage for the monthly digital magazine. November's issue is not out yet. I'm so sorry, but I am working on it this week, and maybe I'll get November done in early December. I am behind on that, I know, and I'm so sorry. It's been super busy, and actually I was planning on getting it done over Thanksgiving break and ran out of time completely. I encourage you to follow EV Resource across all of your favorite social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And as always, I want to thank our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much to Rajeev Narayan leading the pack at the director tier, Christopher Lawrence and Andy Cooper at the executive producer tier. And if you enjoy the podcast and feel like I've earned your support, the best way to show that would be through Patreon. In addition to having your name read out or in the show notes, members of the Patreon family also get ad-free podcast episodes and a bunch of other benefits. So if you've been on the fence about supporting my efforts here with EV Resource, please head over to patreon.com/EV Resource and check out all of the benefits of becoming a patron. I have started to amass a collection of products and companies that I believe offer something beneficial. If you're interested in reserving an Aptera solar vehicle, it's the 3-wheeled, 2-seater awesomeness that is coming next year. I have a referral link in the show notes that'll give you 30% off your reservation deposit. It's only a little bit, but hey, if you were going to reserve one anyway, it helps me too, so it's a win-win. There's a large crossover between EVs and solar, and if you have been thinking about solar for your home or business, Powur Solar has you covered. With potentially $0 down, they can get you started with a solar system of your own and help you cut back on your electric bill. Check out the link in the show notes for more information on that. Domino is selling lithium-ion 12-volt batteries for your Tesla or other EVs. That's the auxiliary battery, not the high-voltage one. Traditionally, even EVs have had lead-acid batteries, and they underperform and typically don't last but a couple of years before needing to be replaced. Domino's batteries are the best performing 12-volt batteries on the market and far outlast anything else you could put in your car. So I've got a referral link in the show notes for that as well. If you use code EVR at checkout, you'll also get 5% off your order. Not a bad discount. I've started the process of becoming an advisor with Driven, and I'm not going to get into that just yet. I'll have more information about that in future podcasts, including an interview with Sam, one of the co-founders. And lastly, if you've ever thought about starting your own podcast, I'd love to recommend Buzzsprout. I use Buzzsprout for my hosting and publishing, and they make it so easy to upload and get each episode distributed out to all of the podcast platforms. I don't really have to worry about that side of it at all. So check out the link in the show notes if you want to know more about the different options that Buzzsprout has to offer. As always, I invite your feedback via email to hello@ev-resource.com. And that is it for this podcast. So thank you so much for being with me, and I'll catch you next week.